Okay, everyone, we're going to get into our August 2nd council meeting tonight. Before we get into our regular agenda, we have a public hearing for the 24 to 28 Capital Improvements Program. So, Mr. Nesico, J.C.?
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for letting me come here tonight and go over this plan with you. Could you pull up the slide for me? I have a few slides that are going to go over what exactly the capital improvement plan is and why we do it, and the proposed expenditures for 5 years, and narrow it down to next year, and then we'll leave some room for some questions at the end. All right, so in this presentation, we will look at what the capital improvement plan is, what are the benefits of it, the 5-year plan for expenditures and funding, and the 24, like I just said. So the capital improvement plan is a long-range planning instrument that we use at the municipality to identify capital improvements and projects and coordinate it with the financing and timing for those identified projects. It includes projects defined as having a value of $10,000 or more and/or a useful life of 5 years. The Capital Improvement Program outlines anticipated expenditures for capital projects and equipment purchases over a 5-year period of time. It gets re-examined, updated, and proposed yearly to council and the citizens of the municipality. Funding is annually appropriated and coincides with the municipal budget that we see towards the end of the year. So the benefits of doing the capital improvement program are it allows for systematic evaluation of all the projects at the same time. It helps to stabilize the debt and consolidate projects and reduce borrowing or undue tax increases. And it assists with preserving the municipal infrastructure. It supports the community safety and promotes an effective and efficient government. So the 2025, and if anybody would like to see this, I have copies of the presentation. I know some of this stuff is a little bit hard to see. But in this plan, the 5-year is totaled out to be $20,727,900 of improvements to infrastructure, municipal parks and facilities, and purchases of vehicle and equipment for police and public works. Street and infill structure totals $16,288,250, or 72% of the total project costs. These will be used to support the preservation and expansion of the municipal roadways and bridges. This continues to consume the largest share of our scheduled expenditures. Our annual overlay program is estimated to cost $7.7 million over the 5 years, and engineering, design, and construction for the Logan's Ferry, Heather Highland, and Kelcan Bridge projects are estimated to cost about $4.1 million. These will be supported by the TIP, which is the Transportation Impact Program, which is driven by the Southwestern PA Commissions in a grant. This will also support the road surface and crack sealing treatments in the amount of $1.295 million. $4,615,800, or 21% of the proposed expenditures, encompass the building maintenance and replacement of vehicles and equipment for the various departments. Building maintenance projects that are slated currently include the resurfacing of the Public Works facility parking lot, and other facility repairs are not yet known but will be determined as we move forward and see what needs to be done. Equipment purchases over this 5-year period include 13 police vehicles, 13 public work vehicles, 8 public work support equipments such as trailers and mowers, 4 heavy equipments, and 1 code enforcement vehicle. Newly added to this plan for the upcoming 2024 includes system upgrades. We found out that Windows 10 will become obsolete, so we have a project that identified computers that are unable to support the upgrade to Windows 11. Those upgrades will cost $47,500 to be able to take care of all of the equipment that needs, updated for that. We also have server upgrades because our server is approaching its end life, and it is recommended to be replaced to prevent system failures. We also will need to replace the phone systems in the next 2 years. The current phone system is Toshiba, and they no longer have a telecommunications department, which means that we cannot get replacement parts. And since Microsoft is eliminating Microsoft Explorer and replaced it with Microsoft Edge, we will no longer be able to access our phone system for programming purposes. So that is also slated to be done. The third category of the capital improvement plan is parks and other projects, and this is the remaining $1,618,400, or 7% of the expenditures. They will be dedicated to municipal parks scheduled for updates, repairs, and development, and the comprehensive plan that is done every 10 years. This will include replacing playgrounds, repairing playing surfaces, courts, parking lots, and pavilions, and construct bathrooms where feasible. Updated facilities will be done as needed and will be determined by the Neighborhood Park Projects survey. Yes. The proposed funding for the slated expenditures will be supported by dedicated millage of 3.45 mils, which equates to about 1.193 million a year. Real estate transfer tax, which is annually approximately $740,000, and the liquid fuels, which is passed down through the state gasoline tax in the amount of $800,000 to $850,000, depending on the year. A new revenue source is currently being looked at to support the storm sewer maintenance. This source of revenue, if successful, will most likely not be available until 2025, but we're hoping that it will come through, so we have it planned out in a few years to be able to support those projects. Additionally, the TIP, which is that transportation impact fee that I spoke about earlier, has grants that will be used to support the bridge reconstruction projects. And that takes us down to the projects that are slated for next year. This will include $1.5 million for overlay. Bridge maintenance would be $75,000, and additional road work. There were two things that were added to the street and infill structures that weren't seen last year as part of the plan that were adjusted. One was to replace 2 traffic light processors on 2022. They're aging and starting to go bad, so we put together a plan to replace 2 a year to get ahead of the repairs and kind of space out those costs instead of replacing them all as they go, because sometimes they can go a little bit faster than you plan. Additionally, our building, land, and equipment, the main changes here from prior years were the computer upgrades that I spoke about earlier that are needed to support the Windows 10 upgrades, and the Public Works tire machine is having a lot of issues, and they've been spending a lot of money trying to keep up on it. So they determined that it's cost-effective to replace that machine at $7,500. Additionally, the accounting software that we approved earlier in the year, the second part of that project will go through as part of the 2024 capital plan. The park improvements are scheduled out to be the same as last year. But additionally, in the park and other projects, we have added the comprehensive plan to the schedule, and that will take place over the next 5 years and cost approximately $50,000 a year to get the comprehensive plan in order. The park improvement schedule for next year will include the second phase of Duff Park, which will include an enlarging of the parking lot area, constructing the retaining wall around the parking lot, and installing a restroom facility near the parking entrance, or near the park entrance. Additionally, Townsend Park will have a pavilion and gazebo repair, an entrance to the interior road repair, entrance and interior road repairs, and a potential fence repair in the park. General park improvements are consistent with prior years, and we put money towards scout projects, general park repairs, fence replacements when needed, and trail maintenance and upkeep. That is pretty much the brief overview of the 5-year. Does anybody have any questions or would like to talk about anything? I believe we are going to be trying for a grant. We tried at one avenue for a grant for there, and since it's not a already existing structure, utilizing something that would make it ADA isn't applicable, but I think that we're looking into other grants. I did not plug that in because I don't want to count on things that might not be there, but I know that we are still exploring the opportunity for grants, trying to get that done.
A couple questions. On our bridge projects, on our bridge projects, we are looking at 3 bridges still. Logan Ferry Bridge, are we also looking at the realignment of that intersection still, considering? So, and this might be, if you need to come back to us, just because I know you don't have the full history, Mr. Nestico. 2018, I think, I was part of the subcommittee that looked at that realignment and looked at some options. We know it needs to happen, but I'd like to know the status of that because we still take a no action. I know we put money into repairs. I know around 2021, Diane had allotted $1.2 million towards that, but I'm not sure where we've landed with that and when it's going to happen.
So right now, the projects are absolutely still slated to take place. Since it's such a large sum of money, we continue to put in as much as we can on a regular basis. Right now, we're trying to keep up with the upkeep. I know that there was some change in the weight limitations on those bridges, but since the TIP program takes a while to get through the process and get approved for the funding, we're kind of just doing what we can to keep the bridges in order, and when we find out our status on that grant, we'll be able to know a little bit more of when the project will actually take place.
If I'm reading this correctly, we're sort of stuck doing what we've been doing. We're allotting a small portion of what we anticipate it will cost each year. So 2024, we're still just putting Band-Aids on.
For the most part, from my understanding, I mean, I haven't been directly involved with the project firsthand. I kind of get secondhand information, but my understanding is it's just we're waiting on to hear on the TIP grant.
Okay.
I may be mistaken, and so I hope to be speaking correctly on the topic, but I don't believe that any of our bridges are at a critical condition. Obviously, that would necessitate an immediate repair or investment into the bridge itself. But I think that the studies and the assessments of the bridges are indicating that obviously they're in ongoing need of repairs and maintenance. So we're doing what we can in the meantime, and as JC said, we're hoping that we can find a source of funding, whether it's through the TIP or something else, because those are substantial costs. So we're monitoring the situation, and we're aware of the reports that have come back on the bridges, and we're making sure that we keep them obviously in working condition, and we're kind of keeping tabs on it. So I can get back to you with a little bit more information. When you mentioned the realignment, I'm not quite familiar with that. But I can get back to you with any other information you want. That's just the limited amount that I know at this time offhand.
And just to reassure the situation, we do have a good bit of funding. We're over, currently we have a little over $2 million put aside for these projects. So if something would come back from PennDOT during one of those inspections and said, hey, you really need to get this done, we have the money to be able to support those repairs, but a complete overhaul is a little bit different than just keeping up on things, knowing they're deteriorating over time.
That makes sense, and I appreciate that. If you wouldn't mind maybe digging a little more, because like I said, I know in 2021 we put another $1.2 million in. I was part of that traffic study in 2018 where we were allotting quite a bit of money, so we should have quite a bit more than $2 million at this point, particularly with the shift in our taxes. So
I know that we have different categories, so if you would open up to page 16, this is just an overview of 2024. But at the top line, if you look, it says beginning balances. So the bridge reserve, we feed in not only reserve money to support those bridge projects, but a lot of times when there's other bridge repairs that are needed done, they've been coming through. They've been hitting that too. So that's been averaging anywhere from 50 to 75,000. And so this 5-year plan, I've been working to make sure that I'm putting money in there to support the yearly needs and also put in on top of that to support the reserves for when the projects come up. So that hasn't been shifted away from that category in any way.
You fully answered my question, so I don't need you to do any more research then. That's reassuring. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have more, but maybe else first.
Just, a couple questions. With the parks improvements, I don't see anything for Murraysville Community Park, the main park, and because,
Yeah, obviously, that's a big thing that's been going through a few years. So we had that slated in 22 and 23. If you would look in the back of your book, those projects that were in the budget, those funds are already on the books. So if you look back, we have status reports that range from 2021, 2022, and 2023. And the funds that were slated and earmarked and are still in process are still on the books. So we've actually, if you would look at the planning, I've already gone in and said, okay, this is how much we've had on the budget. This is how much that I'm accruing into the next year. So those funds are still there. I think right now, if I'd go back, it's about 1.3 or 1.4 that we had planned, but that was supported by the grants that we're in. So I don't have them in the future plans because we already have them on the books and I'm accruing those costs moving forward. That makes,
one other question, and I think it was just announced today that the country's credit rating went from AAA to AA. And does that have any effect on us here at the local level, on any debt or?
no, not on our debt. We're on a fixed interest rate. So our debt is fine. Even on our investments, locally, it's just local interest rate. The only thing that I could possibly see that affecting is any investments that the pension committee would have if it's related to something that is overseas, which I know we have certain investments, but I don't know if those investments would be affected by the credit rating. We're very diversified, so we're able to take ebbs and flows in that pension committee. But anything locally with our local funds, we don't have, that shouldn't affect anything with us. I mean, maybe less interest revenue in the future if interest revenue is affected by the country's credit score.
2 more questions for you. Just out of curiosity, with the Windows 10 upgrades and all the, how many computers are we looking to? How many computers pieces?
I absolutely have that data. I have a big packet that talks all about it, and I can send an email and update this to include how many are actually affected. I know it's all of the computers up here, and I know there's some over on the department side over there, and I think there probably is a few just sporadically placed.
Makes sense. It's a pretty big number for computers, and I know that equipment is a broad category, but I'd be really curious to see a bit more of a detailed list there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it also includes police vehicles. They have computers in their vehicles, and I think those are part of the upgrades as well.
So to piggyback on that, because that was my next question, we have listed a line item for 13 police vehicles, and that line item, which is a much heftier sum, includes the replacement with equipment and cameras.
Okay, so
Multiple questions. Does that equipment there include computers, or did you separate that?
So typically, I believe they switch the computers from vehicle to vehicle. So even when they're upgrading, those equipment upgrades include things like cameras get replaced in that cost. There's also decals, equipment on the outside of the vehicle, like push bars, anything that upfits. Because when you buy the vehicle, it's a base model, and then you put whatever equipment you need in there. But I think we typically reuse the computers. Now, I can get a full list of what all equipment is put in there. I don't have all the details of what
I'm not
exactly.
too worried about that. I just wondered if they were double counting computers.
Yeah, no.
And on that same vein of double, do you know how many police vehicles we maintain?
So 21, I believe.
That sounds about right. I was thinking in the 20s.
I was asked that last month, and then we looked up the answer right then, so I don't remember offhand. I think it was 21 that we have.
So the 13 vehicles with equipment and cameras, then there's a separate item for replacement of 2 cameras in police vehicles. There's no overlap there. That's completely separate.
No, the cameras, I added that in as a skewed down one for the overview, so I didn't, the list gets this long, it gets harder and harder to read. So the details are more in the big book versus the overview, but they typically don't replace the cameras every year with the vehicles. When we're looking at the schedule, we see the vehicle replacements with all the things that are needed to upfit it. And then typically the cameras get replaced. I think I see 2 every couple years. I think it normally follows. So every other year they do camera upgrades.
Perfect. Thank you.
Just as a question on police vehicles, I've heard it asked of me that how many, in a given shift of the police force, how many cars do they have on the road? This might be more for Michael, but
Yeah, I mean, every shift is a little bit different, but I would say at any given time, there are probably 4 officers on patrol in a vehicle,
okay.
if not more, but that would probably be
And what's been posed to me, if you have 4 or 5 or 6, why do you have 20-plus police cars?
Well, we have, and again, as I'm thinking through, I don't know if that is the number, but there are more vehicles over there, and certainly have had the feedback, why are there vehicles parked in the lot, things like that. We have some vehicles that have different uses. Some are used for undercover purposes. Some are used as detective vehicles. They're not always out in the field patrolling, but when they have to go to a crime scene or investigate something, they have vehicles at their disposal. The chief and the captain also have vehicles as well. So, and that, if I'm not mistaken, they're not running the vehicles 24/7. So, in order to kind of prevent the wear and tear, we allow our vehicles to kind of reset, come back in, take another vehicle out. So I don't know the number, but I've been asked that question by a member of the public in my short time here, and I gathered that answer for them, and some of that had to do with the use of some of the vehicles that are over there. Not all of them are just meant for patrolling. They have other purposes as well.
Just thank you for putting this together, both of you. It's very, very good. One question I do have: the phone system, is that for the police department and administration,
It's all.
library?
Yes, it would all kind of be tied in together.
Okay. And the computers, since I'm liaison to the library, their computers under your arrangement, are they separate?
I think their computers are separate.
Okay.
Because we don't replace their computers.
Got it.
Just a quick, just to kind of provide an answer to the previous question, there are at least 24 computers that I can think of offhand that would be part of that upgrade. And again, as JC started to mention there, or did mention, right now we don't have the ability to have our voicemails transcribed over to email. We used to have that capability, and when they did the Windows upgrade that she had mentioned, or the Windows upgrade to the Microsoft Edge, and they kind of did away with the Explorer updates, it eliminated that feature for us. So we've been investigating an upgrade to the full phone system here. It does include the police department, portions of the library, but the other component of that is we also have the emergency operations command center here and the council room. And so anything that we do with the phone system has to incorporate that as well. So we're looking at our various options, but the system that we have is antiquated. It does need to be updated. We're looking at a VoIP system, an internet phone-based system. We think that'll be the solution to a lot of the problems with regard to networking and the computer system itself. And it will tie the library in as well.
So that's budgeted at $25,000
Yes, sir.
per year?
No, that's the whole project.
Oh, okay.
Um,
There's a lot of
that's-
those.
It's estimated. We have a couple different quotes in currently, but we're waiting for the costs for one, and then we're waiting for what the service would cost on a monthly basis for the others.
Okay.
So once we receive the rest of that data in, we'll be able to, kind of bring it to the table, say, all right, how do we want to move forward with this project? But for now, I put 25,000 in, thinking that was, a little bit on the lower range, but at least I know that some of those lower bids, depending on the cost on a monthly basis, it should be around about there.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of those are what, per user per month?
Yeah, there are different options. So we're looking at either one, purchasing the system outright, or leasing a system, and it will be based on the amount of handsets and users, things like that.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
I have a quick question. Again, thank you. It's obvious how much time and effort was put into this, so thank you to you and the staff and everyone that had put this together. As far as the parks improvements, what I know a big focus in the Parks and Recreation and whatnot is the community parks, the neighborhood parks, Chambers, Kovalchek, those types of parks. And each year we're making improvements to those, changing those, upgrading those. In the capital budget, do they specify an amount with each park, or is it more that's an improvement budget and we utilize what would be needed because some are going to be more revamped than others? And we're getting a lot of feedback. Kovalchek, they just did the new playground and whatnot. It's really nice, and we've gotten great feedback from the neighbors there. A lot of people are using it more. We get things like pickleball courts they want, things like that. So it's just each park's going to be a lot different.
Right.
How is that in the budget?
So we do bottom-up budgeting. So we look at what is it going to cost for each individual thing. We don't do, this is your bubble amount, this is how much you have to spend. So the directors are all challenged with looking at individual projects, individual park projects in this situation, and saying, okay, let's identify what does need to be done to get this park up to the standards that we want to keep it at.
So
And at that point, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
At that point, if it's involving fencing, if it's involving repaving, if it's involving replacement of the play equipment, all of that stuff is evaluated, and we look at costs. Okay, this is how much materials cost for this. This is how much the labor would cost. Do we have to outsource or insource? So they're all looked at individually.
So as a capital improvement project, it's more looking at the upgrades to the parks in general, and then each budget each year is specified to whatever park that is going to be that year.
Well, actually, if you would turn to page, let me see here. It is in the 24 to 28. This might be helpful. If you look at the back page in that section, it's page 15. You'll see all the parks that are slated for the next 5 years and all the things that were identified for each park. At that point, they take what needs to be done, what they know the current prices are. They might add inflation
Right.
cost to try to say, okay, in 4 years, it might cost, a little bit more than what it is now. But this is kind of an overview.
That's exactly what I was looking for, so thank you. That's really good.
Okay. Further questions or concerns, council?
To reiterate, thank you. You did
Yeah.
a really wonderful job putting
Very
it
much.
together.
Thank you.
And I'm especially impressed knowing how new you both are to the municipality and not having been here for a lot of the history, that you still have obviously done your research in the background so that you could answer the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Absolutely. As always, this is amazing, so thanks you guys for your work. Okay, so with that, I'm going to ask now, are there any public comments in regards to the capital improvements program? If there's comments about something else, we'll get to that in our regular agenda. Okay, seeing no public comments, we will get into our regular voting meeting agenda. Could I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Dice,
Here.
Mr. Spadaro, Dr. Lee Corns,
Here.
Mr. McKenna,
Here.
Mr. Lemak,
Here.
Mr. Stepanovich,
Here.
Mrs. Ling,
Here.
Mayor Sinan.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Now, Mr. Nestico, I'm pretty sure we have some unlisted amendments this evening.
Yes, that's right. Relative to the full agenda, the workshop item regarding Verizon, unfortunately, the Verizon representatives aren't able to be here today. It was sort of a last-minute notification to the municipality, so we advertised the agenda that they would be here. The individual working on the project unfortunately passed away, so they're assigning someone new to this project. We don't expect them to be back until probably the first meeting in September at the earliest. So our apologies to the public that did come out for this topic. I know this is a big topic to some members in the community, and unfortunately, we advertised the agenda and then found out thereafter. So Verizon does not have a representative here for us this evening. And I think that is the only amendment at this point. However, as we proceed to the action items, there will be some discussion on the short-term rental ordinance, and I'll defer to the solicitor, but we may find the need to make a change there to the agenda after council discussion.
Okay, wonderful. So obviously, anyone who wants to give public comment regarding the towers may do so, but we're not going to have any discussion on that tonight because the reps aren't here, so we really have nothing to go over. Sadly, that individual passed away. And I think we're going to try to get it in September, right? Yes.
That's right. I believe in my discussions with them, we have a pretty busy August meeting. So the goal was to do it the first September meeting at the earliest, which I believe, just looked up earlier, was September 6th. So I would say that may be the target date at this point, if not later. But I had asked them that they not come in the second August meeting because of the volume of agenda items that we have to address.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you. That brings us to our consent calendar items, which are only the minutes from the July 19th meeting. Any questions or concerns about the minutes?
No.
Hearing none, can I have a motion, please?
Make a motion to approve the July 19, 2023 minutes.
Second.
Go Jamie and Carl. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion passes. Thanks, everybody. That brings us to comments by the mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Dice. We have the Tuesday at Townsend coming up again. The next one is August 8th with Keyboard Kevin, Devia's House of Spice, and Sly Fox Brewing. Again, they're at Townsend Park from 6:30 to 8 p.m. I think we're running out of them at this point. Next, our summer paving program. The delays you've been experiencing is about coming to an end, thankfully. It's always, you get a lot of complaints about that, but the roads have to be fixed. Next is Oktoberfest. This is a save the date, Saturday, September 30th, 4 to 8 p.m. at the Murraysville Volunteer Fire Company Pavilion. And you all know where that is, down by the fire station in Medic 1. German-style food, beer, and wine from local food trucks and breweries. Families and children are welcome. Games for kids. It's brought to you by the Murraysville Export Rotary Club. And if you have any questions, you can call Tony Pauly at 724-309-2771. Next is coming up here next week is our Murraysville concert in the park. It's from 4 p.m. until dark with fireworks at the end. The fireworks are roughly 9 o'clock, and sometimes that has to be adjusted by the weather, so just so you're aware of that, they've had to go off early some years to avoid the rain ruining the fireworks. It benefits the Murraysville Community Park. The Amateur Astronomers Association is having a stargazing party Friday, August 18th at the Murraysville Community Park up at Field 6. It's one of those things you just show up for if you want to be involved. And lastly, tonight, the Pennsylvania Resource Council is having a photo contest on pretty much where you can take the ugliest picture of litter around the state here. And there's actually money prizes for that. The additional information for this is at www.prc.org/lens-litter. It's an interesting topic. So that concludes my announcements.
All right, thank you, Mayor. That brings us on to comments by the Chief Administrator. Mr. Nestico?
Yes, just 2 items for this evening. Just to report back to council, the 5 police vehicles that we listed on Municipid did sell a week and a half ago. The total amount was $20,500 for that lot of vehicles. There were roughly 25 bids placed on that lot. So the buyer was actually from New Jersey, of all places. They'll be coming out to haul the vehicles back to New Jersey. Outside of that, the only other item is that just wanted to make council aware we were going to be submitting a grant application to the county to try to offset some of the costs of the demolition that was approved last month for the property on Old William Penn. If you recall that we had a public hearing on that property. The county does have funding available to municipalities for demolitions. I think that the funds are generated through transfer taxes or transfer fees at the Recorder of Deeds office, if I'm not mistaken. But we're attempting to try to get some funding to help offset that cost. So that application will be submitted rather soon, and we'll let you know what the result is.
Awesome.
No other comments for this?
A question there, as far as the grant itself, it's a small, relatively small amount, so we're preparing the grant ourselves, the staff?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
I worked with our code officer to gather some of the information, and I put it together, and we'll be sending it into the county redevelopment office, and we'll see what the results are. So.
Awesome. Okay, that brings us to community input. Can we see if we have anyone signed up? Thank you. Oh, you didn't have to sign up like that. Jeanette?
Hi, Jeanette Pavlik, and I live in Murrayville. I wanted to talk briefly about the short-term rentals that you were speaking about. I have a close friend who manages one, and it happens to be right next to them. And the man, his mother is in a nursing home, so it gives him extra money to have this short-term Airbnb. And otherwise, I don't think his mother could be in the nursing home, and she's from the area, but he's not. So he has the neighbor watching the property. And I told her about this, and she didn't understand why we were putting so many restrictions on it, because she has no problem with it. And they use their neighborhood. They're there, and they don't see any problems with any people that are, coming in to stay. A lot of times it's people who may be looking around in the neighborhood to move there. And so by limiting this, are we really preventing people from moving to this area? And maybe they're going to go somewhere else where they can, stay here for a little bit, a couple days, a week, or whatever, or longer, to be able to investigate the area and try to move here. So we're limiting that ability by restricting and putting all these, different controls on this that are limiting the person who owns the property aren't going to be able to, get money. And in this case, the woman's in a nursing home. You know how much that is. This man needs the money. He fixed up the place. He has all of her stuff in the basement so that it's locked up and she doesn't have to worry. He doesn't own the property yet, and she doesn't want to move. She wants to have that property. And so, he's in a strange situation where having this property being able to rent this out is helping their bottom line. And she has no problem with people there. She doesn't have, the people coming are usually working people maybe, or visiting in the area, going to a wedding. Maybe they have a family, or maybe they're just a number of people. And there's not any problems with, parties or anything like that. I did go to an Airbnb somewhere in Connecticut, and, they said, had the restrictions. You cannot have more than this many people in there. And, we've gone to the beach. They always say, you can't have parties here. You can't have that many people here. Those are fine to have, those restrictions. But to tie my hands as a homeowner and not be able to rent out my property if I'm transferred to Europe for some reason with my job and I want to be able to keep my house because I want to come back here and retire. Or, we don't know the situations of everyone, and we don't know their financial need. So why are we tying people's hands in this situation? I think that's wrong.
Okay. No, I think that's duly noted. Obviously, council didn't just kind of come up with this. We came up with this because of complaints, but maybe we can take another look at it. Tonight, actually, I think when we get in discussion, we're most likely not passing it. Mm-hmm. So we can have further discussion about everything you just said and take it from there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Do you have any very particular pieces of the ordinance that were concerning to your friend?
Probably the land, the size of the land that they have to have. I think that having a fee is, just like any license that you have to get, just making it manageable because you don't want to make it too much. How much, you want people to come here. We want people to see our beautiful community. We want, people to be able to experience what we have here. But by putting restrictions on this, if it has to be too expensive for a person to come and look at the place, come and stay here, then that's not a good thing either. So other than that, I don't recall the rest of the.
Would be curious if you get some feedback from your friend.
Okay.
To email it over.
I'll have her look at it. She would surely look at it for sure. Okay. He's even going to open another one up in another area because on the bike trail, because he's like,
Yeah.
this is nice for him to have, and it takes care of his mother's fees.
Absolutely. All right, thank you for your comment.
Is that second one that he's opening, is that within the municipality or is that outside of it?
Both of these are outside of Murraysville, yeah. One is not, my friend lives in Elizabeth, that's where the house is. And the other one is along the bike trail somewhere. He wants to do it again. He wants to fix up the houses that he finds, that's what he did to his house. And then it's nice for tourism to be able to have people. And along the bike trail, this is just, but people could bike here too. You don't know what this bike trail will do, but this one is the Gap Trail where people are traveling from DC to Pittsburgh and they're staying in places. So that's why he's utilizing that. But people may come here to go biking along our trail. People are athletic and they want to do that. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we don't have anyone else signed up, but for the good of the order, would anyone else like to give public comment? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to liaison comments and committee reports. Start on this end. Jason?
Okay, library met last Thursday. They are putting a lot of energy into planning a showcase tour, so they're considering going to different schools in their reach and showing them what the library has to offer. They're also working on fundraising, different ways to fundraise versus the traditional mailing. Because I think right now you mail a letter and it gets ignored, so maybe they're going to look at electronic ways to collect money for donation. And the programming is where it should be as far as previous years, as far as attendance and circulation. So they're doing a great job.
Okay.
No problems.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Carl?
The Planning Commission typically meets the second week, but are actually going to meet on the 15th as opposed to meeting on the 8th. And the Parks Foundation will be meeting this coming Monday.
Awesome, thank you. Jamie?
Pension is going to meet next Thursday at 9 a.m. So far, fingers crossed and knock on wood, we're at a 3.6% positive return in the second quarter and 8.4% year-to-date.
Wow.
That's good.
That's good, real good.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, I think it's plastic. Jamie?
School board meets August 14th.
Okay, awesome. Matt?
Parks and Recreation, we actually met last Monday. It's kind of been messed up in the summer because we normally meet Tuesdays and they keep falling on Tuesday at Townsend, so.
Yeah.
But anyway, the discussions with those were, we met at Townsend Park, a lot of discussion around Kovalchik. We have the playground is in and it's beautiful. The community's really, the neighborhood's really enjoying it. And then they've done the basketball court up there. They've repaired, or they are repairing the surface. And then there will be the sport court type thing that will go over top of that. So looking forward to that coming down the road. And then we were approached there too with some of the community members with the baseball field that they revamped there at Kovalchik. If you haven't had a chance to take a look at it, it's our Public Works did a fantastic job getting that. And I know the baseball FRAA and everything have been utilizing it. So they're very thankful for that. Mayor already touched on some of the events coming up. The Tuesdays at Townsend, please join for those. We've had great turnouts. We had one horrible weather day. Other than that, it's been good. The food trucks are there, beer trucks are there, or beer vendors are there. The bands have been fantastic, and we've had a great turnout. So please put the word out to your friends and family and keep coming to those. And that's about it that we have. Obviously, the Community Days celebration with the fireworks too is coming up, so that's a big thing for Parks and Recreation. The only other thing I wanted to touch on is I just wanted to say a huge thank you to our emergency services guys and our Public Works and our staff here. They had that emergency services Meet the Community national thing yesterday. I was there with the mayor, and it was a fantastic turnout. There were lots of kids there, adults. I think the chief and the captain were laughing that the adults were hanging out in the SWAT team cars more than the kids were. But it was just really neat to see the equipment that we have in this community and how well it's treated by our staff members and police and fire, and it's just impressive to see it all in one place. So huge thanks to all of them for what they do every day.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, with the cell towers off the list, we have no workshop items. We only have one action item, and I'm not going to ask for a motion at this point. I think, Wes, we need to just have a discussion.
Right. On the short-term rental ordinance that is indicated on the agenda, Mr. Nestico, Mr. Morrison, and I today had a conversation about the definitional section stated that the prohibition on dwelling units for short-term rental applied to dwelling units that were intended as the principal residence of the owner. So the question arose as to what would occur if somebody who owned their own home, for example, purchased another home in a housing plan solely for the purpose of operating it as a Airbnb. And that would not fall within the definitional prohibition because it wouldn't be intended as the principal residence of the owner. So we thought we should amend that provision of the ordinance, and we thought that was a substantive enough change that it should be re-advertised rather than just considering a de minimis change
adoption. And certainly if there are any other items that you would want to modify, amend, or add or subtract from the ordinance, certainly that would open the table to be able to do that at this time. I'm sure that some council members have questions and discussion on the ordinance itself.
Okay, so
in here, I was sick. So I had requested some data, and I thought that it was going to be tabled without that data, so I wasn't concerned as much about not being here at that meeting, but it got approved to be advertised anyway. Anyway, that being said, the information's sort of available now for this meeting with the zoning parcel map, although it's really hard to see from that map which parcels are developed and which are not. Anyway, but what you can see is that the parcels of 5 acres or more exist in every zoning district that we have here. So as council members, we are called to appropriately balance the rights of homeowners with the interests of neighbors and other community members who may experience possible negative side effects associated with people renting out their homes on a short-term basis. So after a lot of thought, on my part, the question is not, for me, whether it makes sense to regulate short-term rentals, but how to do it to preserve as many of the benefits as possible without placing a burden on the neighbors. So in order to do this, I think originally drafted in the original ordinance to be allowed only in commercial and mixed-use zones. It essentially prohibits almost all residential property owners estate. So here's what I believe our policy objectives should be. We need to ensure that traditional residential neighborhoods are not turned into touristy areas to the detriment of long-term residents. I believe I've been told that currently there exist 4 to 5 short-term rentals that typically operate during the cooler months of the year. Is that correct? Yes. So becoming touristy doesn't really seem to be an issue since we're not a destination vacation, we're not Punta Cana, and we're not really a tourist attraction town. So that one's kind of already taken care of. We also need to ensure that any regulation on the STRs does not negatively affect property values and the ordinance as it currently exists that would do that. And we need to ensure that homes are not turned into party houses. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. We need to minimize public safety risks and noise, trash, parking problems often associated with short-term rentals without creating additional work for the local police departments. So we also need to give permanent residents the option to occasionally utilize their properties to generate income, extra income from short-term rentals, as long as all of the above mentioned policy objectives I said are met. So if our policy objective then is to give law-abiding and respectful citizens the option to utilize their homes as short-term rentals, in the current ordinance as written, there exists a formal permitting requirement and a process for revoking permits from troublesome properties. That's section 219-14. B, which cites both 2 repeated violations of the chapter in any rolling 12-month period, as well as the time for revocation to last. We also need to ensure that speculators, and I think this is what we were getting to here with what Wes was saying, do not buy up homes to turn them into STRs while We need to ensure that homes are not turned into party houses. There are currently occupancy regulations that exist in the ordinance as written under sections 219-7A and B that cover this to prevent this possibility. We also need to minimize public safety risks and possible noise and trash parking problems without creating additional work. For local police and code enforcement, noise is covered under section 219-7D and E, trash upkeep, section 219-7H, and simple nuisance, section 219-13. There should also be a requirement for short-term permit holders to maintain books and records for a minimum of up to 3 years, so that it's possible to obtain information necessary to conduct inspections and audits as required. So I propose that the ordinance is rewritten because there currently exist very few short-term rentals, that we follow the ordinance as written for permitting without the zoning restrictions and revoke the permits of those that violate it, rather than limiting respectful and law-abiding residents from realizing income from their property. That's all. Thank you.
Jamie, to clarify, whatever, I don't remember our initial draft in terms of property size, but to clarify.
There was no property size in the original.
just
It was
zoning.
just commercial and mixed use.
And you're suggesting now that we keep or not keep the 5-acre requirement?
I'm saying we remove all zoning restrictions. I'm saying if they violate the ordinance as it's written, which there's lots of contingencies in there, we revoke their permit. And there is some more language in the ordinance which talks about the time period for the first violation versus the second violation. You know, and that's something that even as a council, we could discuss that, you know, if it's a troublesome property, it's a permanent revocation.
So in zoning, the only zoned district right now that's not included, I believe, not counting public land, is PRDs and planned residential development. What would the impact be? How do we perceive the impact if we removed all zoning restrictions, if there were short-term rentals and PRDs?
What's the impact on, I mean, where like homeowners associations a lot of times have some type of
They have their-
policies and whatever, that is after the ordinance that we have? Is that how they would trump, that would trump anything?
Well,
Whether we have it or not?
I would
if
say they
no.
couldn't they couldn't allow more than we're willing.
Right, but they
They
can
could restrict more.
yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
There
Which
are,
I think
there are
those
also,
PRDs all have them, right? I mean, the majority of them now all do.
Well,
I would say.
I think the point is well taken. You just turn this into a permitting thing where people are permitted, and then if they do have the parties and things of that nature, which is what I think we're all worried about, we revoke the permit, and then if we get
And
word of them
fine,
renting
and
it, we
fine.
fine them. I think this is something absolutely to consider. I think I want to read it again and really think about it. I think my proposal would be, instead of voting to re-advertise right now, we simply put this on our next agenda as a discussion item. Everyone comes prepared, we hash it out at the next one, then we can vote to advertise and pass it. I don't want to drag this out, but this is just, it keeps evolving, so I think we have to deal with it. Are there any issues with that plan?
Not with the plan. I guess originally we were talking that it was going to be in the business and mixed use, and then we increased it to the 5 acres, and now we're saying it's going to be in the residential zoning. Okay, and I understand the argument, which makes sense in a way. Let's not treat it with zoning, with permitting, if you will. But I still think, I don't know, I'd have to step back. I'm skeptical that that's the way we were looking at it before wasn't better. So it's worth looking at again.
Yeah, I think we all need to take another look at this, consider what Jamie said, consider what Jeanette said, and then just come back, have a discussion, and then let's get this thing passed in whatever form it's going to be.
Just have, for that discussion, Mr. Nestico, there have been complaints in the past with these?
Yes. Now, again, as it was mentioned, the complaints came in last, we'll say, winter time. There were 4 or 5 properties listed on the rental sites, Airbnb, VRBO. If you would look now, or at least as of 2 weeks ago, there was only one in the municipality. It looks like two. When you type in Murraysville, a second one comes up. It's up on the northern boundary of the municipality. It's not actually in Murraysville, but so there's only one right now. It's not a significant problem that we're facing. It's not a prevalent issue, but with the original inception of this ordinance and the way that it was drafted and designed, it was kind of taking that in mind and getting ahead of things. The idea behind the original districts being only business or mixed use was to keep this activity limited to those areas where it would seemingly make a little bit more sense to have a turnover. No different than a hotel, if you will, where people are in and out on a short-term basis, and to try to keep that out of the neighborhood. So that's where the original intent behind the ordinance started. So it's not a major problem. We didn't view it as a major problem. We did have some complaints. Again, the complaints came in primarily from one property where I believe the individual is the primary owner of the property, but then spends the winter months down south in Florida. And at that time, based on the reviews and the online listing, the property was being rented out to what seemed like people coming in town for weddings, to visit family, things like that. So again, not problematic. I think some of the reports were loud at night or some extra vehicles in the driveway, things like that. Maybe a concern for a party. If I recall correctly, but most of the reviews weren't that type of activity. So I don't think that's what we envisioned when we started this process of looking at the ordinance. It wasn't to try to prevent the neighborhoods from turning into short-term rentals and problem properties and becoming havens for a party or things like that. But it was designed, again, to curtail the behavior in a residential neighborhood where the majority of the feedback for that would be that you don't want the neighboring property next to your own house to become a transient sort of property where people were different people were in there on different weekends. You don't know who that is. They're coming up and down the streets. And additionally, and I understand the sentiments of council, and I certainly think that if we want to reconsider the way the ordinance is presented, that makes total sense. I would ask council to also consider and weighing out the burden placed on staff if we go from kind of monitoring this in the background to now where if it becomes open to the entire community, now we have more of an administrative aspect that we'll have to engage in because at the outset, the administration was going to be, is it in the district or is it not? Because then it's either permitted or it's not. And now we may have to watch the sort of conduct and the behavior, things like that. If we're getting complaints, what type of a complaint? Did they violate something in the ordinance? I don't think that was our goal from the outset, but certainly that could become the goal if that's what we'd like. So I do think that it makes sense to weigh things out and consider what we'd like to see from the ordinance. And I would hate to overrule the council president, but if it's not ripe for the second August meeting, we can always come back at a later date. There's no reason to rush this into place because, as it was said several times, it's not a pressing issue that we have to address immediately. So we do have time. And the reason the ordinance was presented in the first place was simply to just get ahead of things. And we're still well ahead of things. So as I said, only one listing now. It's not like this is a problem in the community at this time. So at whatever point in time council would like to come back, I can also be well prepared to address any questions, concerns. If there are things in the meantime that you'd like me to look into, I can also send the information out that I presented to Councilwoman Ling regarding the parcel sizes. She asked for information on over 5 acres. So we have that map, but that may be a moot point now if we kind of evolve the direction of the ordinance. So I'm willing to take directive from council and be prepared to come back whenever I'm asked to do so.
Okay. Well, I think in the meantime, we'll just have it as a discussion item at the next agenda, and we'll take it from there.
That's fair.
Okay?
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, any old business from anyone this evening? Any new business?
I have a question. As we saw in the capital improvement project, we spent quite a bit on overlaying. I just noticed that School Road, it was beautifully paved, and then there's a lot of cutouts for the FTMSA sewer manholes. Is that typical that happens after the nice pave job?
Would that be a question for me, Mr. Lemak?
Yes, sir.
That wouldn't be a typical situation. On behalf of the municipality, we did provide notice to the various utilities regarding the paving project. I would say maybe something was lost in translation when it came to the actual execution of the project. Once the paving was finalized, it was clear that the different manholes needed to be brought up to grade. So no, that is not typical, but unfortunately, we are where we are. So they did, I believe, finish up bringing the manholes to grade on School Road, and so now you're looking at, I guess, what would be now the finished product.
Okay. Thank you.
Along the lines, not of the manholes, but in our community, when it's finished, it looks very nice. But leading up to what's now been an overlay, all our streets look like a mess. I mean, there's, markers. I mean, when I say markers, how shall I say, oil tread from the cars going in and out, and it just looks sloppy. So what do you do about it? I don't know if you can, or whether there's a scrubbing process, or am I being a little bit too critical here? I don't know.
No, I will say, in my experience, that this is not the first time that's been asked. So it is not uncommon to hear that following a paving project. I would say that also based on my experience, typically that will wear away. So if you're referring to the tire tracks and the marks that kind of leaving the area, certainly you see it at the intersection here with School Road and Sardis as people are turning the bend. I don't know if it's because of the way tires wear when vehicles are turning, but it's much more prevalent there. That will wear away. In the short term, yes, it's visible, and you can see the tire marks coming from all the different paving areas, but it should go away. It does go away. It kind of eventually fades out, but in the short term, it's visible. I don't know of any approach to try to scrub or clear it off of there other than just allowing the normal course of travel to kind of, I guess, bring it back.
I have one other item not related to this, separate totally, but and it happens to be the state representative is having a shredding event August 12th, 9 to 11 at the office on Route 66, Donnell Plaza.
Shredding of documents.
Yes.
Cool.
What else?
Like, are they, School Road, that'll be lined too, right? It doesn't yet.
Yeah, I think just the
That comes
paving
after.
portion is
Yeah.
done. Yep.
Okay.
Not to make this so much longer, but Carl just got me thinking, we haven't had any glass recycling events for quite a while. Are those just put? Or?
I can't say that I know.
There was one not too long ago, the mayor.
Oh, yeah. No, this is paper
Mayor
recycling. I'm
Simon?
sorry.
No, I know, just got me thinking.
Shredding.
Do we have a glass recycling event recently?
I think they announced it at the meeting
We're
before
both
that.
gonna say that then.
Yep.
All right, we both.
Yeah, we have
Good to
one,
know.
usually one a quarter.
Yeah, good to know.
Okay. So that was old business. Any final questions or concerns regarding anything? Hearing none, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.